Today I'm giving you an update on my surrender experiment with my body. It's been 6 weeks since I shared my deeply personal story and the experiment that I'm on, the journey of change. And today I'm going to share with you 5 revelations that I had over the last weeks. The first revelation is something that I shared briefly in last week's episode already, but I want to go into more detail because this is kind of like a make and break information that you need when you're on this kind of journey. A lot of my students and friends as well that do listen to my advice, they use the tips and the techniques and tools that I teach them, come to me again and again and ask why it's not working or why they're not changing, why their reality hasn't changed yet. And I want to talk about that today with you. And to be very honest, I could be in the same situation of doing the work, using all the tools, doing everything I can to go through this process and not seeing any results. So I can say that I could be in the same situation and think exactly like them to say, well, am I doing it wrong? But I know better now. From experience, I know that that is not the case. You are actually making progress one step at a time. You're even making so much progress that you can't even imagine of how much you are already changing. But you just have not met the tipping point yet, and so have I not. As soon as you hit that tipping point from all of the work that you have done, suddenly everything changes so quickly. It's like a bucket of water that keeps filling up over and over and over again. So much water and nothing happens with that bucket until it hits this tipping point and it suddenly shoots out all of that water because it tips over. And all of that water that suddenly comes flooding out, that's the change that you will experience once you hit that point. So what I want you to know out of this metaphor is that just keep going. Never give up. That is the worst thing that you can do. And I tell myself this as well. I don't see any progress yet in my mindset about my body or in my body itself, but I will be damned to give up. I know that I just have to keep going. I have experienced it before where I have been working so hard and nothing changed until I hit this tipping point, and then suddenly everything went so quickly. So keep going, okay? So please don't feel like you are doing it wrong or you're not doing the right things or that you don't still have yet the right tools. You might want to add tools, you might want to mix it up, that's absolutely okay. But once you have a good set of tools, you have everything you need and you just have to keep going. You will never know. There is nobody who will ever tell you if you just are away from that tipping point, 10 drops of water or 100 drops of water. You will never find out. Exactly like I don't know how many drops of water I'm still away from that tipping point. But once you hit the tipping point, it doesn't really matter anymore. You don't care anymore of how many drops of water you had to go through. And you know that it's all been worth just going through even the hard steps on that change journey. And that's exactly what I have to keep doing, reminding myself that I don't want to give up. Every time I look at the mirror and I still have negative thoughts and feelings about how I look. Every time I put on clothes and I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. I just keep reminding myself every single day that this is a process, this is a journey, and I am progressing every single day. It's just not visible to me, but I am working my way towards that tipping point, and as soon as I reach it, it doesn't really matter anymore what happened beforehand. So I just keep going. That is my revelation number 1 that I wanted to share with you today, because it's just so important when you are on this change journey, when you are on such a surrender experiment. The second tip or technique is not such a revelation because I talk about it all the time. But what has been a revelation for me is of how much I have been doing it and using that technique. And what I'm talking about is the releasing of stuck emotion or the letting go of old emotional patterns when it comes to my mindset about my body, of how I think and feel about my body. And if you want to know how to release emotions, how does that actually work, I do have several episodes on this. I have videos on this. I even have a guided meditation on my YouTube channel where I guide you through the process of emotional release. So try those out. I will link them for you. The first situation came pretty quickly after I started the surrender experiment. And I sat myself down in silence, which I do quite a lot these days on this journey. And I asked the universe to give me a sign, a memory, a message that helps me to continue and to progress. And what came to me briefly afterwards was a memory of a photo of me when I was about 21, 22. And I remember it still like it was yesterday. My friend took that photo of me and I was lying down on her sofa, I think. And kind of because I was lying down, my jumper rose up a little bit and I could see my belly. And it was just not a very flattering photo. And I think this was the first time that I looked at myself and at a photo of me where I felt shame about my body or I didn't feel good about my body. And I think this is quite a huge part of this whole journey, a part of my story of where this all kind of started. Of course, this is not the first time that I didn't feel good about my body, but that was the first time that I probably had kind of thoughts about my weight. When I was younger, more like a teenager, I would always have other things that I would criticize about my body, but it was never weight. So I think that photo was the first time where I really said, okay, I put on some weight and I don't like how I look like anymore. So quite a crucial point in my story, and I sat myself down and I felt the emotions that I felt back then and that I still feel and that I still have stuck inside of me. And I decided to release that energy. And while I was releasing that emotion of that first photo, I realized that there are so many other photos that I keep doing this. This is a pattern. I keep having photos taken of me that make me feel ashamed or makes me feel criticize myself for how I look. And this has not been completely resolved inside of me. This is still a process. I will still need to release more of those emotions around those photos. But it's fantastic that I found a way to release all of those emotions that I still feel when I look at a picture where I don't look like I want to look like. And it even got to that last weekend I had friends over and one of my friends took a photo of me and it was so horrible in the regards of how I looked. And instantly, my instant reaction was delete this photo because it's horrific. But then I immediately was like, no, send me this photo. Let me use this photo to actually release these emotions that I feel, because apparently I still haven't released it. And so, yeah, I let her send me that photo, and kind of I was thinking, well, I probably have so many other photos that I can find somewhere where I can use them to release these stuck emotions or this pattern outside of my subconscious mind. But then I was like, you know what? I actually can think of so many photos where I have had the thought. So all of those photos are still in my mind. I don't really need the physical photo. So yeah, still something ongoing, but that was a fantastic revelation and experience as well for me, a chance to just release so much more emotions out of me. The next revelation is another insight, and I actually received it again when I was sitting down in silence. And as you can imagine, I'm not always sitting down in silence, because sometimes I feel like I do get something out of it. I get so much more out of it, but I then need a few days to actually process what just happened. And that was in this case as well. It kind of was that it took me about 3 days to actually get to a point where I was like, okay, I get it now. I get what that memory was trying to tell me. But to be honest as well, I don't think I have completely gotten it yet. I have not gone through all of the stages of what that's supposed to telling me. So I think there's still more to go. I will not tell you the whole story because that will take far too long. I just want to tell you kind of like the highlights. So I sat myself down and I asked the universe again for a memory that I can release next with some stuck emotions or some kind of pattern. And what I got was like a memory of a time when I was still living at home just before I left and moved out and moved away a couple of hours from where I grew up. And while I had this memory, I just kept being in the experience of that memory and wandering kind of around my memory bank of that time when I was young, because I was still not getting it, like, okay, what is that telling me? But I think throughout that experience, while I was sitting there, I realized that, okay, it probably has something to do with the time that I moved out, which was the time that I probably started for the first time to put on weight, because I was eating really badly. I was drinking sugary drinks or alcohol much more than when I was still living at home. But of course, that is not what the memory wants to show me, because that's just 3D stuff again, which is not the solution. So I think it took me until the next day to realize that it has something to do with a shift that happened from when I was still living at home and from when I then moving out. So what has changed for me? And I think it really hit me on day 3 that it had something to do with the times in my life where I easily was happy with my body, where I didn't really have as well excess weight, where I just lost weight quite easily without living healthy or being mindful or restricting myself. So I suddenly realized that there were kind of like 2 huge examples in my adult life. And yes, I was still very young, but it was 2 examples where that was the case. And the connection that I suddenly made, or that my subconscious mind helped me to make, is that every time I was in that situation, I got a lot of attention and I was very popular. And wow, it kind of hit me when I realized that, as you can imagine. So I saw suddenly that there was a belief, a connection inside of me in my subconscious programming that believed that I can just lose weight or be my ideal body shape if I have a lot of attention, if I have a lot of friends or boys liking me, or in one of the scenarios I was a lot on stage in front of people and I got a lot of praise for it. So I was just so shocked by that revelation, but so grateful as well that I got it, because it means I need to break that belief. Because of course, as long as I'm not in a situation anymore where I get a lot of attention and am very popular, which as older as you get is probably not happening so much anymore, I can't be my ideal weight. I can't be just losing my extra pounds easily, because there is this belief that these 2 things have to be together, and that's just ludicrous. So realizing it makes me, of course, completely aware of kind of a synaptic connection that I have in my brain, my neural networks, that I need to break up, because I don't want to needing attention and popularity to be able to lose extra weight. You know what I mean? So, like I said before, I don't think that I'm completely through that revelation yet. I think there is more to come, but I'm already at a very good point where I can start working on those limiting beliefs to let them go and deprogram out of my subconscious mind. So that was a really great revelation for me about a couple of weeks ago. Revelation number 4 just happened a few days ago. I actually woke up out of a dream and I had very strong emotions because I remembered the dream. And those emotions were sadness, grief, and loss. And they were so heightened for me, still so present when I woke up, that I decided to release them. I've done that many times before. If I wake up out of a dream and I have very much still a sense of the emotions there, then I take it as a message to release those emotions. So I stayed lying in bed and worked on releasing these emotions. So I got in contact with the emotions of sadness, loss, and grief, and I started being with them and talking to them and being able for them to release. But then what happened was, while I was concentrating on that, something much bigger came out of the woodwork, so to say, and I suddenly felt a much more powerful emotion. And that emotion was fear. It was fear of feeling loss. It was fear of feeling grief. It was fear of feeling sad because of a loss. And when that emotion hit me, it was so intense. It was kind of really even painful in my body to release and work with that emotion, with that energy. But I just kept with it. I was like, okay, we're gonna release this now. We're gonna keep focused on this. And it really worked. I felt at some point it was being released. It got lighter. And then the funny thing was, once I released that fear emotion, I tested myself. I went back and imagined myself being in situations where I would lose somebody, or where I would feel grief, or where I would feel sadness. And suddenly these emotions felt completely different. They felt much lighter than I would usually think about them. So my experience with the emotion of sadness, grief, and loss was suddenly much different, but as well lighter. It was easier. It was easier to feel them. And there was not so much resistance, of course, because I let go of the fear. And I don't know where it comes from. I have not gotten to that yet. And maybe I don't really need to understand where that fear comes from. I will have probably experienced loss in my childhood, probably like anybody. It can be something small, it can be something big. It doesn't really matter of how it got stuck in your subconscious programming. I was just happy that I released it, and I don't really fully need to know where it really comes from. That is not necessary, not always. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not necessary, but that was a really cool experience to feel such a difference between when I started that process of releasing the grief, the sadness, and the loss, and then testing it afterwards again, after I released that energy, and it just feeling so completely different. It was just amazing. So yeah, that was my 4th revelation. And do I really know that this experience of releasing that fear emotion, if that really has something to do with my surrender experiment? No, I don't know that. I don't know if it does or if it doesn't. But when it comes to that, I really move into trusting the process, trusting the universe to know better what I need to go through to get to my goal, to heal myself, so to say. It's all about trusting, because my conscious mind doesn't understand all of this. I can't heal myself just thinking or analytically thinking my way through it. It doesn't work like that. So I need to move into trusting the universe to know best what needs to happen next for me to keep going on this journey and being in that experiment. So that is kind of like the answer, that I just move into trust, and the universe serves me with the experiences that I need to be able to let go more and more and more and surrender. And for me to just go through what the universe is delivering me on a platter, so to say. And that trusting leads me as well to revelation number 5 for today. And that is something that happened over the last couple of weeks. And when I think about what happened, is kind of like a sentence that comes to my mind that I know already since I'm a child or a teenager, and that is, it gets worse before it gets better. And for a long time, I know this sentence more from a area of healing, doing healing work, and knowing that when the body starts to heal something, that it quite often the symptoms can actually get worse before they get better. It reminds me as well of what a lot of people say when they heal themselves, that when they started on this process of change, which led them to be healed, that kind of their world fell apart, or huge parts of their world or their life fell apart, which is the step of changing, because you are changing, so things around you have to change. The universe has to set things right for you to be able to experience that new person. And that means other things have to fall away, or they have to break apart. And that is something that I started to experience over the last 2 weeks, whereas a couple of weeks ago, we had a bit of a health scare with our dog Mikey, who we had to bring to the emergency vet in the middle of the night. And yes, he's fine again now, but still it was very scary and not a great experience to go through that. And then this week, my husband ended up in hospital as well for 2 days. And yes, he's okay now as well again, but it's just like, what the heck is going on? The two people, part of my family, both kind of ending up in the hospital. And instead of seeing it as I am doing something wrong or getting myself distracted by it, because I've heard it from so many people before that healed themselves, that this is what happened to them, I see it now as a good sign. For me, it just means that I'm making progress. I'm actually changing, and the universe is shifting things around to fit my new reality, to make my new reality a reality. And that could mean that something has to change as well in my environment and in the people around me. And if you are on one of those journeys of change, or you want to heal yourself, or you are in such a surrender experiment, I want you to know that your world falling apart is not a bad sign, it's a good sign. It's the universe making things right for you, and that can feel quite painful. That's what lots of people say, that it was quite shocking, and it's quite shocking to me as well, because I don't want to think about, okay, what else is going to happen, right? Until I am changed, or what still needs to be made right in my surroundings for me to suddenly arrive where I want to arrive. But I had a conversation with the universe about this, and I made it clear to the universe that I am willing to go and experience whatever I have to experience to get to where I want to go, to heal myself. It really actually helps me to start seeing my body mindset, what I have the surrender experiment about, to see this as kind of like an illness or a condition that I have, and for me to heal that part of me. And I told the universe that I am willing, whatever needs to happen, bring it on, because I'm not going back. I will heal myself. I know this, and I'm ready to take whatever it needs to take, and whatever I have to experience, whatever has to break apart in my life for me to get where I want to go. Okay, these were my 5 revelations that I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for being with me here today and listening to my progress. I'm looking forward to keep sharing more with you, and for me to just be really open and honest and share my experience while I'm being on this journey. It's always easier, of course, to talk about things once we've solved them, but this time around, of course, I'm sharing with you what actually happens while I go through this and while I'm not there yet. And as you heard probably as well, that quite a few things, even that they were already huge revelations for me, they haven't come to an end yet. I know there is so much more to come. There are probably more things that I still have to reveal themselves to me for me to completely let them go. So I will be with you again probably in the next couple of months to give you an update. And let me know if you want to know anything specific, if you want me to talk about some parts of this that you want to go in more detail, that you want to know more about. I'm happy to dive deeper with you. And with that, I love you and leave you. Talk soon, and bye-bye.